Why LS engines are the greatest street engines ever. So first we gotta define street. I define it as a car that can make up to 750 horsepower. The LS engine can make more than that. A lot of engines can. But for the street, if you've ever played any Gran Turismo, you know that you're pretty much limited by what you can do with tires that can also drive in the rain. Anything more than like 675, 700 horsepower, you're really just not going to be able to get sufficient traction to take advantage of any more horsepower than that without a tremendous amount of suspension work done to your car. Then we're also talking about engines that can last over 100,000 miles. In my opinion, that automatically disqualifies all modern direct injected engines, because after talking with many mechanics and seeing it firsthand for myself, what we're seeing is the back of the intake valves just constantly getting more and more dirty and clogged up as the life of the engine goes on. It seems to be that manufacturers are timing it so that these engines don't break down until the warranty is pretty much up, killing the used car market for these things. And that's not a big deal if you're always constantly buying new cars and just getting rid of your 5-year-old car. But if you're like me and you own the car you want for the rest of your life, and you got to determine what engine am I going to put in there to get as much miles out of it with as much street fun as possible, it's not going to be a direct injected engine then, because they literally every second that they're on, they're less powerful than they were a second ago. However small that loss is, they're always constantly losing power, even though on paper they can beat out the compactness and lightness compared to horsepower benefits of LS engines. Also, most modern engines, for whatever reason, I know why they do it. They do it to help pass emissions and to help make as much power per liter, but they're burning oil from the factory. To me, your car's broken if it's burning oil from the factory. They say that's stock now. That's the way it's supposed to be. I don't buy that. If you have to put oil in your car in between oil changes, you've got a defective engine. The LS engine, you don't have to do that. Most older port injected engines, you don't have to do that. But a lot of new engines, especially direct injection engines, that just seems to be a factory feature. It's already burning oil. I don't like that. Next is pump gas. We're looking at cars that run between 87 octane and 93 octane. Any more than that, your range is really limited. We're looking at a car that you could actually take on a road trip. And then budget-wise, I thought about this number for a while, but I picked a budget of about $35,000, because for $35,000 you could buy an entire Camaro, Mustang, or Challenger. And if your budget's more than that, yes, there are engines out there that are better street engines than an LS engine. Money, no object. If I could buy anything out there I wanted to, there's 3 engines I would choose over an LS engine ultimately, despite how great of an engine it is. I would pick the Busa V8, which they bored out to like 4 liters. It revs to like 11,000 RPM and makes, I can't remember, like 400 or 500 horsepower, naturally aspirated. It is physically smaller than an LS engine and obviously weighs less for the same horsepower than an LS engine does. Plus it revs high. That makes no difference to your tires, but it is fun, I'll give you that. And then there's those 2 Cosworth V12s, I think, that are also lighter than an LS engine. I don't know if they're physically smaller, but they're lighter. One makes like 1,000 horsepower and the other one makes like 650 horsepower. I would probably go with the 650 horsepower one because it weighs less. It actually is smaller than the other one. And for the street, you're able to actually use all that horsepower. You're not limited by what your tires can grip. And then we're talking about something that can pass inspection. Now, those 3 engines I just named, I don't think that any of them can pass inspection. I don't think the Booster can. Maybe those Cosworths, but we're talking about things that came from the factory with emissions equipment, so that if you live somewhere like California, you could, if you wanted to, pass inspection. So that's what I mean by street engines. Next, here I have things that make a difference to your tires and things that make no difference to your tires. We've all heard them at car meets, the Coyote guys who'll sit there and try to convince you that their 5.0 is a superior engine, or that they made the selection of buying that 5.0 specifically because it's an overall better engine performance-wise than an LS engine. It will make a car go around a track faster than an LS engine, than if it had an LS engine. And they'll usually go straight to 2 things. One, it revs higher than an LS engine, which they do. And then they'll get into the complex cam systems of them. The 4 cams, 4 valves per cylinder, how that is able to flow more air. There's better thermal efficiency. It only needs 5 liters to do what the LS needs like 6.2 liters to do. I used to kind of sound like that. I bought a 2017 Mustang GT thinking that. I fell for Ford's marketing scheme, their goalpost move, because they no longer actually understand or care or try to compete with what I'm trying to explain here today. They just changed the conversation altogether into things that make no difference to your tires, which are revs and efficiency. Now, if you ever play Gran Turismo, then you know that you can make a car go a lot faster on a track by tweaking its weight and its suspension and its weight distribution, rather than just trying to give it as much horsepower as possible. If you can explain to me how being able to rev higher or have a more efficient engine makes any difference to your tires, or gives you any actual real world advantage in propelling a car faster around a track, please explain it to me in the comments, because that is where no non-LS guy has ever been able to explain to me. And it's because it doesn't make any difference. What does make a difference to your tires is weight and center of mass. The better your center of mass is, that is, the closer it is to the middle floor of the car, the easier it is for your car to change directions. And that's racing 101. And weight. The light is right. The lighter your car is, the better its power to weight ratio is. If you need an explanation of why that's important, just look at leader bikes, motorcycles. Why are they able to go so much faster than almost all cars despite only having less than 200 horsepower? Well, it's because they only have to make 400 pounds of weight change direction, whereas cars have 1 or 2 tons of weight to change direction. And so LS engines give you the advantage of both of the things that make differences to your tires. They weigh less typically than other engines that make the same horsepower, and their center of mass is better than engines that typically make the same horsepower because their heads are smaller. So its center of mass is lower in the block as opposed to higher up in those big heads. With the heads also smaller, you're able to tuck that engine in further into the car usually, and lower into the car, as in like 4th gen Firebirds and Camaros, where they're, changing those back spark plugs that are a pain in the butt because they're tucked underneath the firewall. Well, they did that to help its center of mass. You can't really claim that as an advantage with any other type of engine setup. All right, let's take 2 identical cars piloted by the same person, with the only variance being the engines that they use. Let's assume that they both make the same horsepower, power, whatever. One is, let's say, is an LS engine, and the other is a Coyote 5.0. Which is gonna go around the track faster? Well, the LS engine is. The LS7 will, because it actually gives you two advantages that make an actual difference to your tires, which are the only part of the car that actually make any contact with the road. Whereas the Coyote is going to give you two advantages that make no difference to your tires. Next, let's say we have a naturally aspirated engine that's going up against a boosted engine. Which is going to go around the track faster? Well, the naturally aspirated engine is. And that's because it gives you two advantages that make an actual difference to your tires. It weighs less because it doesn't have turbos hanging off of it, or like a wastegate and all the piping and the intercooler, which also would throw off its center of mass compared to the boosted engine. But also, how it makes its power, which is identical, its peak power is identical to the boosted one, is better. Naturally aspirated engines make instant throttle response. There's no turbo lag. They don't have to spool up a turbo like a boosted engine does, and therefore it's going to go around the track better. Next, let's compare an engine with a stock cam to an engine with a big lumpy cam in it. Well, so they might both go around the track at relatively the same speed or same lap time, but the one with a stock cam is the one you would want to go with either way, because at least you're going to be able to idle, and that saves you gas. And if we're doing an endurance race, how important being able to take as few pit stops as possible is in a race like that. So you would want the one that's got the stock cam. An LS engine can make a lot of power with this stock cam compared to other engines with smaller displacement that need a bigger cam to make up for the lack of displacement, to match something like an LS engine. But hopefully you're starting to understand that if you were going to design a street engine that falls under these categories to propel a car around a track as fast as possible, you would pretty much come up with something like an LS engine in one of its many variants. Or am I wrong? Am I missing something big here? This video is educational, but it's also a question. This is me asking you, the audience, am I wrong about this? This is my current understanding of how all this works, but I open my comments up to anyone that would like to bring up anything to counter anything that I've said here, or anything I missed here, or to correct something, or to open my eyes up to something that I didn't see before. But that's pretty much it. If you like this video, if you'd like to see more content like this, go ahead and like the video, subscribe, and hit that bell icon to get alerted whenever I drop more stuff like this. And I hope to see you down below.